Yeah, okay. Any other officers wish to? Yes, Mr. Eaves.
Yeah, I was just going to make some general comments really on the deputations. In terms of Mrs. Brooks, she particularly was concerned about the noise from the development, and particularly the HGV noise, and the relationship with Nutwick Road. The application was supported with a noise constraints assessment and operational noise management plan. So those are seeking to minimise that noise disturbance, and the proposals, as we saw, do include the acoustic fencing to the east of the HGV loading bays. It's also worth noting the loading bays and the position of the building has shifted in relation to Nutwick Road as in comparison with the existing building, so it is set well off that boundary. In terms of lighting, we have had lighting plans and proposals in terms of lighting, and that is directed away from residential properties. So although the site is well lit and would be well lit, the direction of that lighting is to secure the lighting is properly directed. It's also worth noting the tall tree screen along that boundary with the railway line. These matters were also considered by environmental health officers, and they raised no objections to the proposals in terms of lighting. There is a noise condition recommended in terms of plant noise, and that is before you on the agenda. In terms of congestion and impacts on the highway network, obviously that has been considered in detail by the council and by the county council. We've looked at the assessments that have been made and assessed those assessments are in the report. Shelley Saunders raised the issue of the last mile operations and the clear trend towards this type of development, and it's certainly true that we've seen a growth in that market and that area, which has probably been boosted by COVID as well, but the trend was established before recent times. Conditions are recommended in relation to operational management plans, vehicle branding and traffic counts, and this will allow the council to monitor the transport and the routes that vehicles are taking from the site. The other thing that was mentioned was this the right location? Were other locations more appropriate? We have to consider the merits of this proposal before us. We don't have applications for other sites in different locations. But obviously we've given thorough consideration as to whether this is an appropriate site in itself for this development. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Members, do you wish to question any of the officers? Any other officers wish to ask any questions? No? Sorry? Oh, Councillor Hughes again.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I've
right.
read the report. There's lots of questions that arise from that report, and so that's what we're here to do. I'm going to get your name on, Mr. Firth. I have to get your name. I do apologise. Loads of papers in front of me. Hampshire County.
Mr. Hurst.
Hurst. I do apologise. I've read the report. Within it, it talks. What do you know? What the total percentage of total traffic is represented by this site in Crosshaven?
No, I don't have an answer to that question.
Anyone? Are there any other questions before I go into debate?
Madam Chair, if I may, I have to ask the question of the officers then, because Mr. Hurst, I do apologise for getting your name wrong. Within the report, Appendix T, it talks about the most significant part of Havant town centre affected by this, which is 1 mile away from this location, is Cardinal House. That's what it says in the report, Appendix C. You can read it yourself. The question for me was, how many vehicles go past Cardinal House every single day, which is 1 mile from this location? We have no idea what the totality of those vehicles are and where they're coming from. Yet this is listed in the report as a fundamental premise, and I don't understand how that is in there. I did ask the officers too late, I'm afraid, to get the environmental control officer present here this evening to answer that question, but I was too late. Anybody know?
Cardinal House is on Park Road South, isn't it? And what you're quoting is the environmental health officer's comments in terms of air quality. And I believe that Cardinal House was identified as one of the prime areas for air pollution in Havant, and I think there's also a monitoring system close to that location. What the environmental health officer concludes, though, in terms of air quality and in terms of the impact on all receptors, is that there's not an objection to this scheme based on air quality and the effect that the traffic generated from the site would have on, for instance, Cardinal House or any other location within Havant Town Centre.
Thank you. So just for clarification, it is a reference point within Havant Town Centre for environmental pollution. There's a reference point there, and it is determined that the additional traffic load caused by this operation at this location won't make it excessive.
It has not resulted in an objection from the environmental control officer on air quality grounds.
Thank you.
Are you okay now, Councillor Hughes? Yeah, anyone else? Any more questions? I will now go to debate. Thank you, councillors. Who wishes to? No? Yes, Councillor Howard.
I think it's good we are using a brownfield site. I think that's what we should be doing. But I do feel that we are lacking key bits of information. And for me, I don't know if I can make a decision without having those extra bits of information.
What bits of information, Councillor Howard?
Well, it's like how many lorries are going to be exactly coming to and from the site, who is going to be the occupier. I have got a feeling I might know who it is, but I could be wrong. And, you know, as Councillor Hughes has just said, some of the traffic flow. So I just thought I'd start the debate. I'd be interested to know what my colleagues think. Thank you.
We've just heard, haven't we, how many lorries there are? Well, Councillor Hughes questioned it.
Sorry, have we got a definite number, or is it a approximate?
868.
And the traffic move.
Oh, no, sorry,
78 today.
Right, so
that was the vans.
That's the big lorries.
Okay, thank you. Who next? Councillor Batal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My biggest concern is that we've got a huge site here and it's only going to create 70 jobs. But having said that, I don't see any other application in front of us. So, you know, 70 jobs is better than still 0 jobs. So, you know, even though my colleagues have said we don't have the information, some of the data is based on existing use of the site. Having read the reports, having heard the deputation, I'm tending to go with the officer's recommendation on this. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to congratulate the officers on the report. The ones we've been doing recently with Havant Thicket, this one and Mill Rive later on, they are significant reports, huge amounts of detail. It's quite clear there's no cut and paste exercise taking place. They are genuine works of original works of art, and so well done on that one. I took the time this afternoon to sit down with the officer's report and also look through the planning portal, all the various comments within there, because I think if we get the report and there is a dilution of what is actually said in the report compared to what's in the comments, and the comments were really interesting, you know, and I don't doubt the desire for people to put their point of view across, you know, so I take that on board. What was really surprised me in the report, a number of things. Firstly, that the average traffic speeds along New Lane, in both north and south, were genuinely quite surprising. You know, a 30-mile-an-hour road, and I think it was 40 miles per hour in one direction and 38 in the other. And I was genuinely surprised by that in terms of, wow, and there's no traffic calming measures. Clearly, this, with the proposal coming forward in the Section 106 agreement, will do something to mitigate those speeds. I also take on board the access from Coston Drive and what you can actually see, and sometimes you can look left and right and actually not see the big thing in front of you because you're too busy, your eyes are swinging left and right. And there was 11 accidents over the reporting period. So the question is this the right place for those vehicles to access the traffic, the local road network to get onto the strategic highway? There are different of opinions. I think the numbers that are being quoted to us, and I take the point that one of the deputies made in his report in terms of the numbers at 7 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night, I think it was, are confusing to say the least. So 1,208 in and out each day gives you a grand total of 2,416 and not 2,415 is what it states. The actual number would be 2,416. It's that type of anomaly that questions whether actually the detail's in there. I'm reassured by what Mr. Dix has said to me in terms of HGV movements, and also what Mr. Hurst said. The fact that the Highways Authority are content with what's being proposed here, and equally with what the environmental control officer has said in relation to air pollution at Cardinal House and understanding the impact, I am minded to go with the officer's recommendation. I do take on board what Ms. Brooks said in relation to noise and light pollution, and I'd like to think that the acoustic panels, I was looking for the efficacy in terms of attenuation of acoustic panels. I couldn't find it, but I'd also like to know what the dB noises are of a HGV reversing, because I'm sure that is quite loud. Whether you have a banksman as a person to, you can turn the reversing signals off so that somebody monitors the vehicles going in and out might be a solution. But I also take on board that I genuinely believe that if this is going to be a successful operation here in Havant for the benefit of the wider community, that having a local liaison panel with residents part of that panel to work with the operators to ensure that where there are issues that are affecting the amenity and the operation, that they can be addressed in a local manner to get resolution. So I'm minded to go with the officer's recommendation, Madam Chair.
Are we having a motion? Yeah? No? Okay, fine. That's fine. Councillor Branson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I came into this meeting. There were a lot of sort of issues in my mind. Going to the site yesterday on when it was on the site view actually did help a lot to actually see it there, and certainly the tree planting round, you know, and the view at the back. I can see that you know, moving away from Nutwick may well be an advantage. I'm sort of have been slightly reassured by that, but I agree that some sort of liaison panel with the residents of Nutwick as well as those in New Lane would be a very good thing. So if there are any problems, they can be looked at. I was very concerned about traffic going down New Lane south, but I've been reassured with these handheld machines that can be monitored completely, and anybody found doing the wrong thing can be, you know, it will be done, and that the operational plan will be you know, good enough to hopefully that this won't happen, but you know, and if there is, they can do something about it, and it will be an enforcement issue. I think, you know, my problems, you know, have been reassured by what we've heard today, so I think I would probably agree with Councillor Hughes that I would be happy to approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Branson. Do any of the officers wish to question any of the members at the moment? No? Okay. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I was very pleased. My very late request today to ask if there could be a layover of the proposed plan and the previous plan. Mr. Reeves, thank you so much for doing that. Really showed how much smaller these buildings are than the previous buildings, and how they've moved away from Nutwick by quite some distance. So I was very pleased to see that. Also, I think the idea that the company will look to have some sort of communication with residents is absolutely excellent. There are not that many probably companies these days who will show that sort of concern for the residents. And if there are problems and the company concerned is willing to meet with residents and get any problems solved quickly, I think that will go a very long way to establishing good relationships with the residents, and also for a long and successful continuity of employment for Havant with this site. So I will also agree that this is
Thank you, Councillor
good for the Commission.
Patrick.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes?
Madam Chair, just for the avoidance of doubt, to those that are sat in the audience and possibly listening at home, I have absolutely no idea who will be operating this site. There is a suggestion that we know and we're not telling anybody. I have absolutely no idea who will be operating this site.
I'll answer that, Councillor Hughes. No, and certainly we don't know who's operating this. But does it matter if no, the rules and regulations, we're here to decide on fine balance whether we approve or disapprove. I will have some comments now to say myself. When we went along to the site on Monday, it was a very hot afternoon, but like Councillor Branson, we went down the full whack of the site, and I was amazed at the height of the trees between the railway and Nutwick Road. And officers described to me how much further away the lorries would be. There's the train noise. And in fact, we all noticed how loud the factory next door was. In fact, it was really horrendously loud. And I find that this is quite strange. But nevertheless, we do appreciate there's been a lot of concern from residents, which I understand. I myself have been involved in lots of traffic situations. I live just near Asda roundabout, which has its awful problems to start with. We actually went out onto the road, and we actually were there at about 3:15, which was when children were coming out of school. In fact, there was only 2 teenagers coming along. There was no young children. I've spoken to a friend of mine whose grandchild goes to St Albans School. And in fact, she said the majority of them come from Hayling, and they come down Crosslands Drive. In fact, I never saw any rush of traffic, what you would normally expect to see at 3:20. And I know this factory is not going yet, but other factories are. I've lived in the borough for more than I'd like care to say, and New Lane was always an industrial site. I worked in New Lane many years ago, to my, sadness, but it's always been bustling. It's always been an industrial estate. And we, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever, we allowed houses to be built up near it. And I think we were hoping that they would gradually merge together to be a good basic situation where you've got industry with the residential. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the concerns are perhaps concerns that they're just, I think what they've got, my attitude to the people is just wait and see. If we approve this, I think that they will be pleasantly surprised by all the things that are happening. In my view, New Lane has never been really busy in the last few years, and it will be good to see. I mean, it's the centre, it's our industrial site that's in Havant. We've got to encourage industry, and I think this is probably the best of a bad job. Once again, Councillor Patel mentioned about the size of the site. We don't want empty factory sites. We can't decide for ourselves that we are going to put some private developer in there, because that's not our job. Our job is to look at strike a fine balance between whether we permit or we refuse. I think I've said enough. Thank you. Other members wish to say anything else? Do we have a motion? Councillor Patrick, you are proposing permit. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hughes. Do any of the councillors want a clarification of the conditions before we go ahead with the vote?
Madam Chair, can we add a recommendation, if possible, officers, that we consider a liaison panel to work, the operators to work with the residents and local businesses to address any areas of conflict during the operations?
Is that via a planning condition, Councillor Hughes, you're recommending, or?
If we can do a condition, as a condition as a recommendation, i.e. the condition is that the operator actively seeks to establish a residents liaison panel to ensure the smooth operation of the.
Can we do that? Is that it?
Just going to find it if they can do it.
Sorry, just having a discussion on that. Yeah, it's questionable whether it meet the test for a planning condition, but we can certainly put it on as an informative with the decision notice. Given the confirmation tonight that the company would be willing to do that, I would strongly hope that that would be the case going forward. Yeah.
I'm not deaf, but just because you were speaking and I was trying to comprehend what you were saying, can you just run that past me again, please?
Yes, a planning condition needs to meet a number of tests to be a valid imposition on a development. It's considered that it would be more appropriate as an informative on the planning decision, which we do put on a lot of cases. We put informatives about a lot of extra information that we would like considered by the applicant, and that would seem to be a more suitable proposition than a condition.
Councillor.
Madam Chair, on that basis, my view is that the fact that Mr. Fry articulated that the operators would not be averse to a type of customer resident liaison board, that the consideration be given to in the comments, consideration be given to the establishment of a customer liaison board by the operators to work with local residents and businesses to address any conflicts arising from the operation of the site. And we copy that in the minutes of the meeting, and we find some method to provide that to Kingsbridge Estates, who are one of the partners.
Yes, we can take that discussion forward. Obviously, the recommendation is for a number of things to happen before we issue a decision, so we can discuss that as well. But yeah, and it would be through an informative, but we can also address that directly with the agent.
Okay, Councillor Branson.
It was just a suggestion, really, that I think if there was any conflict on this, I think the local councillors could actually, because it pulled 2 wards, apparently, this site. I think the local councillors could actually institute this as well.
Sit on the board. Sit on the panel.
Yeah.
How brave. Thank you, Councillor Branson. Councillor Patel.
Sorry, just to clarify that, then that's not a condition, right? It's a recommendation.
No. Are you all happy with the explanation? Before I take a vote, there's no more questions from officers? No? Okay.
I was just going to reiterate the recommendation
if you would do, please.
Is to grant planning permission subject to the satisfactory completion of the Section 106 agreement, the expiry of publicity, and the conditions as set out and amended by the addendum updates. Thank you.
Thank you, members. So you're happy with that? Okay, I'm going to take a vote then, please. Can I see your hands, please, for permit?
Did you say permit?
Gary, you are losing your hearing. You proposed it. Those are 4. Mr. Gregory, have you got the numbers? And against? Abstain? Thank you. I hereby declare that the application 21/00200 has been granted permission for the reasons stated.